there's this collection account. It's still a government account. Okay? And again, all these reports, the public debt, liability, where we have contingent liabilities, by 30th of September, we have a responsibility to report. And we will report. We'll bring all these reports.
You will, but you have not.
But September, we still have days. Do you want me to bring it earlier, Senator? We can try to work and beat the deadline. Maybe by if you want it by July interim report, we will. But September 30th, we will. We are required, by the way, by law to report. So all these reports will come out. Yes. Okay. Now I'm happy that now I have understood you. Yes. I was struggling.
You just stated something, but
yes.
You've understood that
very well. Yes. So, Chair, do I move forward at this time? I think it's,
yeah, you go to
page 9. Yeah. Yes. So here, Honorable Chairperson, the stock of public debt as at the end of April 2025.
The delay in response has invalidated that debt. Now you can move it to 30th of June 2025. And just share with us, but at that point in time, we can start and thereafter we can get an update.
There may be some slight adjustment, but the figure that I have is up to 30th of April. We can adjust a little, maybe bring it as an addendum. But, Honorable Chairperson, the status of public debt was 11.49 trillion, which is 66.9% of GDP as at the end of April. But in present value terms, it's 63.8% of GDP. So I think that clarity also needs to come about, and that was already provided in some table. If you check the table that we provided earlier. Now, the public debt comprises of domestic debt is now higher than the external debt. It has always been higher, but is now slightly higher than it has been in terms of percentages. It is 6.16 trillion in terms of domestic debt. External debt is at 5.33 trillion. External debt, as at the end of April, was composed of, out of that 5.33 trillion, 2.94 trillion is multilateral debt, which accounts for 55.26% of our total external debt. And World Bank alone, which is the single largest multilateral lender to Kenya, is at 1.86 trillion, which is 63% of the multilateral debt. So multilateral debt is the highest at 55%. But you know, multilateral is the cheapest debt. So we need even to have more, higher percentage. In terms of bilateral debts, we have 1.1 trillion as at end of April, which is 21% of the total external debt, of which China alone accounts for 652 billion shillings, or 0.652 trillion, which is 59.45% of bilateral debt. And then we have 1.29 in commercial debt, which is usually the most expensive, making up about 24% of our total external debt, with Eurobonds constituting 970 billion shillings, or 75.57% of the commercial debt. Yeah. So that is where we are in terms of external debt. Still having quite also some bank advances. So those are the amounts that we owe in terms of numbers as at the end of April 2025.
Waziri, did you say you're treating IMF as domestic?
No, there's the facility that we call funds on lend to government. There are funds that ndugu wewe ndio unadili na hiyo. Utamwambia why this is.
Maybe Director Doro can explain better, but officially the funds were borrowed by CBK, and then they all lent to Kenya to the government in Kenya shillings.
Okay.
That's what the reason is domestic. But Doro maybe can explain better.
Dolo, you can introduce yourself first because you are not here when we introduce it, and then you go ahead to explain why that bit isn't treated as a domestic debt.
My name is Danny Ndolo, Director Debt Policy, National Treasury. When we had turbulences in the external sector, that is balance of payments, imbalances, the IMF lent to Kenya through the central bank. Of course, it is a drawdown on the quota Kenya owns in the IMF capital structure, and once it comes to the central bank to support foreign exchange reserves, the shillings equivalent was on lend. Initially it was 80 billion in total, 80 billion Kenyan shillings, and then it was on lend to government, because at the end of the day the central bank will have to pay, but central bank did not need to spend the money as an entity. So the money was on lend to the National Treasury to support the fiscal requirements, and in Kenya shillings. So the debt owed by Treasury to central bank, in our books, it is in Kenya shilling. It is a central bank which have that debt in SDR equivalent in hard currency. Thank you.
Okay, and I believe
Yeah.
there's also some aspect of monetary policy in terms of management
Yeah.
of the market. Now, I know we are running out of time, but I want you to go straight to, for the other issues, we will submit your written submissions as you shared. But I want you to pronounce yourself on record on the issue of Equalization Fund liability. And before I say that, by the way, Honorable CS, we engaged with the Equalization Fund board through the CEO. And last year we said this committee, which is the primary oversight committee of devolved functions, and as well as also Equalization Fund to county government, that we need to get a regular report of implementation of Equalization Fund. The last one we got the last financial year. This year we have one report. We've not received from the Equalization Fund board implementation report. The last meeting we've had with your officer, the CEO, was a guidance, because we don't want the Equalization Fund to be in theory, and the Parliament must have visibility in form of oversight. We have not received any report, and we agreed we need to receive quarterly implementation report to keep the implementation of Equalization Fund on track. And we also need to find out whether from you or from your officer why that has not happened, but then address yourself to a letter of commitment that was written by your predecessor upon inquiry by the Senate of arrears compliance plan, and that arrears compliance plan has not worked as written to us. We've written to you to get to find out Equalization Fund implementation sunset clause is fast approaching. We have Equalization Fund administration bill that is stuck at the National Assembly for 2 years, while the arrears stand at 39 billion, and even appropriated fund of equalization in 2024-2025 were not credited to Equalization Fund account, except a small portion that happened. So we need to get to find out, because otherwise this becomes an academic exercise when it comes to implementation of Equalization Fund, and the arrears will continue. So can you tell us how Treasury intends to comply with the arrears when the sunset clause is fast approaching? and whether or how do you intend to give the Senate a revised, arrears implementation plan in terms of making do with the arrears that are pending of 39 billion over the coming years, and your commitment to make sure once appropriated, the fund should be credited to Equalization Fund in order to make sure the functions work. Over to you on equalization.
Yes, exactly,
please.
on equalization.
Yeah.
Just right on what you've mentioned to the minister. Waziri, the last time your predecessor was here, as Chair said, I'm just trying to look for that letter. There's a letter, I think that the clerk can just show you, of the commitment he made before this committee as far as the issue of equalization fund is concerned. And thank you, Chair. Yeah, kindly, Beverly, just give a copy to Waziri that this is a matter this committee had dispensed fully. And this commitment was done by your predecessor. And it doesn't matter because still the office has a Waziri. And we would not want to have just commitments as far as this equalization fund is concerned, and no money is remitted at all. You've indicated before the committee on how you're going to maximize revenue collection. Why are we still in 2025 discussing equalization fund? Simply because a minister appears before this committee, does a commitment on paperwork, but it is never actual. Yet you have a CEO who has a whole team that is running in that particular office. But what are they doing? Why are you providing administration funds to the CEO and his team, and you're not able to provide the funds for them to manage these funds? Chair, I submit.
Okay, Honorable CS, I think that's sufficient in terms of the questions from the members. You can give us your response for the record. In the rest, we will take your submitted report. If there's any clarification, we'll write back to you for written, addendum for that matter. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I just have, before I go to the Equalization Fund, the two bills, they have a few requests, one or two. One, on the audit bill, largely my team has no problem with that bill, and I think the submission is there. The only thing that we may request is once the Auditor General, because this is largely prepared by the Auditor General, once she makes her submission, you could share her submission with us so that if you have any reaction to them, we would give. So that is so far as the audit bill is concerned. Now, the other one for procurement, we have a request to put across. The Cabinet has approved a complete review and overhaul of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act. And we are preparing and going at the moment. We want to even do a robust public participation on that bill, on that law. So we were requesting that this private members bill could be stood over, and the executive brings forward a more comprehensive review of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, if that is agreeable, so that we may end up, there are a lot of changes that have taken place, including e-procurement and all this. We want to capture everything in the law because we feel there are so many gaps. So those are the only the requests that I wanted to put across for the committee to consider. Then I can... And my guarantee would be that we'll engage also on the proposed amendment by the private member to be included in the comprehensive amendment to the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act.
Put that request in writing to the committee, formal, and your commitment with time frame within which you can share the comprehensive. And then we will also formally respond to you so that we can take that out of that. But while you do that, maybe the committee has interacted with the private members, Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act. An issue of critical concern for all of us, it should be of the same for also the government, is the disposal part of the current act has created prohibitive processes that are extremely bureaucratic, that assets that, for example, government made a decision by presidential decree that vehicles of this CC or that CC should be grounded forthwith, and that happened, and vehicles that are brand new are grounded and kept at public works storage. And instead of doing disposal in time, when the values that to be realized from those vehicles were worth a lot to the government, it was kept in store until the net book value of those assets are zero. Now, you can't shoot yourself in the foot by writing disposal process that is, we fear corruption so much to the sense that the laws that we bring forth are actually becoming excessive detriment to and very costly for us. So can you also, as National Treasury, please address the disposal process? And with automation, all your fears will be addressed, just like procurement. So the procurement system, the new procurement system you have, must be accompanied by relevant laws that explicitly discusses the process and the legislation around it, and also goes further to address the disposal process, and it should happen within the same system so that all fears can be addressed, and government, whether it is at the county level or national level or government-owned entities, do not lose so much, because the laws we've written makes it like 3 years for you to realize, because you have to do A, to do B, to do C. By the time you do that, the net book value of these assets, some of them, particularly machinery and motor vehicle and such other issues, becomes zero. Even to dispose them of, then you cannot even discuss. Can you then make sure that that also is addressed, and the rest put it in writing? Over to you.
That's noted, Chair. I agree with you. Actually, some of our bureaucratic processes end up achieving the direct opposite of what we intend to achieve. So maybe now I move to address the Equalization Fund. And now, Chair, was asked to talk about the status of compliance with the commitment of proposal plan to pay Equalization Fund arrears that was submitted to the Senate through the letter dated 19th of May 2023, written by my predecessor. Background: Equalization Fund is established by Article 204 of the 2010 Constitution of Kenya, which requires that 0.5% of all the revenue collected by the national government each year, calculated on the basis of the most recent audited revenue received.
Honorable Waziri, I want you to skip that part of the law, the provisions, the policies, and go straight to how Treasury intends to comply with addressing the issue of arrears of Equalization Fund, and your commitment to credit to Equalization Fund account any appropriated fund of equalization. Just at those two issues.
Thank you. So, Chair, then I'll go to page 2. I'll skip the other ones. So here, entitlements to the Equalization Fund. Honorable Chair, in the first 3 financial years after its establishment, that is 2011 to 2012, 2012-13, and 2013-14, the Equalization Fund had no allocation since the first policy identifying the marginalized areas had not been developed and published. That is not news, I'm sure, Chair. But since inception, that is 2011, 2012 to 2025-2026, the total entitlement to the fund is 80,092,847.94. So it's over 80 billion shillings, which should have gone into this fund, which is calculated based on the provisions of Article 204.1. As of June 30th, 2025, the National Treasury had paid 15.93 billion into the funds out of the 80 billion. The current outstanding amount is 64.162 billion, including the financial year 2025-2026 allocation. So in the financial year 2024-2025, the Division of Revenue Act allocated 7.8 billion, out of which 2.5 billion was paid into the fund, leaving arrears of 5.352 billion. And the table is has been provided there. Now, completion status of projects. So this is the table. The completion status has been provided to the counties. I mean, how the money has been applied in the counties. So let me go to page 6 of my presentation. To facilitate payment of Equalization Fund arrears, the National Treasury, via letter, which I had already indicated to the Senate dated May 19, 2023, proposed a plan to allocate additional funds annually to the Equalization Fund to clear arrears by allocating 9.976 billion each financial year, to all the way to 2027-2028, which would then have amounted to 39.9 billion as shown in the table. So that
is assuming each financial year the appropriated equalization fund is credited to the account.
Yeah, that was assuming that would be over and above the normal, or rather the constitutionally provided allocation. However, Chairman, due to tight fiscal space, the National Treasury has not appropriated the arrears as per the payment plan provided due to the following reasons. One is the commitment that the funds owed to the fund was planned for the 2024-25 financial year. However, you will recall that the Finance Bill 2024 fell flat, which was to raise the 347 billion in real intended to help and pay off debt and fund development projects, including the debt owed to the Equalization Fund, was withdrawn after public protests, Chairman.
And I want to stop you there. You know, we're all politicians, and Honorable Waziri, with a lot of respect, it's very shameful if you sit here as a seasoned legislature. There are a lot of funds that are appropriated, including county additional allocation, conditional grant, and many other issues. Why don't you just come on record and say the government does not wish to support Equalization Fund and implement Equalization Fund for the record? Because other funds, conditional grants, are remitted with some liabilities. Any flimsy reason is good enough for non-remittance of Equalization Fund to Equalization Fund account. And sincerely speaking, it's a very sad reality. The original intent of the drafters of the Constitution is to address some, deliberate resource denial by successive governments, by policy document of government, and it was believed that to address that situation could not have been a switch on and off. It had to comply with a process of making good with that. Despite the fact that devolution came, this is constitutional requirement. It's grave violation of the Constitution by Treasury or by extension the government, because it's the law. It clearly states it doesn't state subject to other, because you present a budget that should be realistic, ought to be realistic, and is believed to be realistic. Then within that budget, 0.5% is supposed to go to Equalization Fund. Now, if you appear before the committee and you make nice statement of fiscal constraints, you've not been asked by the Constitution. The article clearly states, and you are a legislator. I don't want to engage you on this because it will get a bit embarrassing. Clear to be realistic. All these constraints you will discuss is supposed to be have been taken care of by the time you do budgeting. So 0.5% ought to just go as soon as it is appropriated. Now, please, sincerely, with a lot of respect, so I don't refer you to the sections of the the articles of the Constitution. Can you tell us when Treasury intends to comply, in simple terms?
Chairman.
And then all these other internal processes, you make the necessary adjustment in budget, as you've just shared. The original estimate of the budget, for example, of the current financial year was about 3 trillion. You had to adjust it downwards, informed by other realities. After you have adjusted, you have to set apart. You have to set apart in budget, as you've just shared. The original estimate of the budget, for example, of the current financial year was about 3 trillion. You had to adjust it downwards, informed by other realities. After you have adjusted, you have to set apart the 0.5. Okay, then it means this 0.5 is within the constraints of all the realities. And immediately it's appropriated, it's supposed to be